The night my brother announced his engagement, my dad raised his glass and said, "Finally, a woman who knows her place." He wasn't talking about me. He never was. I was sitting 2 seats down from him at Carmine's, the Italian place on 44th Street that he loved because it made him feel important. Red leather booths, waiters in black vests, the kind of restaurant where men like my dad ordered for the table without asking what anyone else wanted. He'd chosen the wine already, a Barolo he'd been mispronouncing for 15 years, and he was in a good mood because my brother Marcus had just gotten down on one knee at Central Park and his girlfriend Priya had said yes, and now everyone was celebrating. And I was sitting there in my chair thinking about a wire transfer I needed to authorize before midnight. "Women today," my dad said, not really to anyone, swirling his wine, "they want everything. Career, independence, their own this, their own that." He set the glass down. "And then they wonder why they're alone at 40. My aunt laughed nervously. Priya smiled in a way that didn't reach her eyes. Marcus was already looking at his phone. I took a sip of water. He wasn't finished. "A man needs to feel needed," he said. "That's biology. That's just how it works. You want a good husband, you let him lead. Simple as that." He looked at me when he said the last part. He always looked at me. I was 31 years old. I owned a company that managed just under $400 million in real estate assets across 6 states. I had 17 employees, a director of operations, a CFO I'd hired away from Morgan Stanley, and a standing Thursday lunch with my attorney that I'd been keeping for 3 years. I had not told my father any of this. I had not told my father any of this. I had not told anyone in my family. What they knew was that I had a small property thing going. That's how my dad described it at family dinners. A small property thing. Like I was flipping condos on weekends. I let them believe what they wanted. That was easier than explaining. You have to understand something about my dad to understand any of what comes next. He is not a cruel man. He is not the villain of this story in the way that villains usually are. Loud, obvious, easy to point at. He's more complicated than that, and that's what made it harder. He grew up in Buffalo with 4 brothers and a father who worked the line at a steel plant until the plant closed and then worked at a grocery store until his knees gave out. My dad was the first person in his family to finish college. He got an accounting degree from SUNY Buffalo, married my mom at 26, moved to New Jersey, made something of himself, those are his words, made something of himself, and spent the next 30 years believing that his way was the right way because it had worked for him. His way involved certain rules. Men earned, women managed the home, or they earned less, or they earned and still deferred. The natural order of things. He said that phrase a lot, the natural order of things, as though the universe had handed him a memo confirming his worldview. My mom had a master's degree in education. She taught 3rd grade for 22 years. She was brilliant with children, patient in a way my dad never was, and she gave up a department head position in 2003 because my dad thought the extra hours would affect the family. She never said she regretted it. But sometimes, late at night when I was in high school, I'd find her sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea reading. Just reading. Not watching TV, not on the phone. Just sitting there very quietly in the dark. I thought about her a lot when I was building my company. I didn't start in real estate. After college, I worked in commercial banking for 3 years. Credit analysis, loan underwriting, the kind of work that is deeply unglamorous but teaches you exactly how money moves and where it pools and where it drains away. I was good at it. My manager told me I had an unusual ability to see risk that other analysts missed. He meant it as a compliment. I took it as information. At 26, I left the bank and started doing my own deals. Small ones first. A duplex in Montclair I bought with savings and a small SBA loan, renovated with contractors I found through a property management forum, and rented out within 6 weeks. Then another. Then a 4-unit building in Newark that everyone told me was too much trouble and turned into my most reliable income stream for 4 years. I did not tell my dad about any of this. Not because I was hiding it exactly. More because I knew what he would say. It's risky. You need a backup plan. What about benefits? What if the market turns? He would worry in a way that was really about control, and I didn't have the energy to manage his anxiety on top of my own, so I just didn't mention it. By the time I was 29, I had 12 units across 3 properties and a management structure that ran mostly without me. I took on my first commercial deal, a mixed-use building in Hoboken, 12 residential units above 4 retail spaces, and that's when things shifted. I brought in a partner for the equity raise, structured the deal through an LLC, and cleared more in 12 months than I had made in 3 years at the bank. My dad thought I was still doing the property thing. My brother Marcus thought I was a landlord who fixed toilets on weekends. I let them think what they wanted. That was still easier than explaining. The engagement party was in April. Priya's family hosted at their home in Westfield, a beautiful house, warm and full of people. Her mother pressing food on everyone. Her father giving a toast in Hindi and then in English, both versions gracious and funny. I liked Priya. I had liked her since Marcus first brought her home 2 years ago. She was a physician's assistant at NYU Langone. She was smart and calm, and she had a way of looking at my brother like she genuinely found him interesting, which I had never quite managed. My dad gave a toast too. He talked about Marcus. He talked about the family name. He talked about what it meant for a man to choose wisely, to build something, to lead. He did not mention Priya's career. He did not mention that she had put herself through a graduate program while working nights. He did not mention any of the things she had built. He talked about Marcus. On the drive home, my dad sat in the passenger seat while I drove, because he'd had 3 glasses of wine and I had had one. He was in a reflective mood, which meant he was going to say things. "That family," he said. "Very traditional. I appreciate that." I kept my eyes on the turnpike. "Priya seems like she'll support him," he said. "That's what a marriage needs. One person leading, one person supporting. Doesn't matter which is which, really." He paused. "Well, it usually matters. Okay, Dad, you know what your problem is? I knew this was coming. You've never let anyone lead," he said. "You do everything yourself. That's admirable, sure, but men find it isolating. Like there's no room for them." I thought about the conference call I had at 8 the next morning with a development partner in Phoenix. I thought about the term sheet I needed to redline before Thursday. I thought about the fact that I had recently signed a letter of intent on a 68-unit apartment complex in Nashville, and I had not slept more than 6 hours in 11 days. "I hear you, Dad," I said. He nodded like that settled something. What happened in June was not something I planned. It started with a phone call from my brother. Marcus had a business. He'd had it for 4 years. A mid-sized events staffing company he'd started with a college friend, placing hospitality workers at corporate events, private parties, that kind of thing. It was fine, not exceptional. He'd been living off it, growing it slowly, which I respected even if I thought his margins were soft and his client concentration too high. The problem was the client concentration. He called me on a Sunday morning, and I could tell from his voice that something was wrong before he said anything. "We lost Hartwell Group," he said. Hartwell was a corporate hospitality company that had been Marcus's anchor client for 3 years, about 40% of his revenue. I had mentioned to him, twice, gently, that this was a structural risk. He had said he knew, he was working on it. "When?" I asked. "Friday, they're consolidating vendors, going with someone bigger." He paused. "I've got payroll in 3 weeks and I'm about 40,000 short, maybe 50. I was quiet for a moment. "And the line of credit?" I asked. "Maxed." "Marcus, I know." His voice did something I hadn't heard in a long time, something small and scared. "I know, okay? I'm trying to figure out if there's a bridge. Someone who'd come in short term. 60 days, maybe 90, while I close some new contracts I have pending." I told him I'd think about it. What I didn't tell him was that I'd already been watching his situation for 6 months. Not intrusively, just aware. I knew people in his industry. I'd heard things. I had been waiting to see if he'd call. He called. "Here's where I have to be honest about something." I could have just called him back and said, "Marcus, I'll wire you the money. Consider it a loan, no interest. Pay me back when you can." That would have been simple. Clean. Generous in an uncomplicated way. But I didn't do that. And I've thought about why, and I think it comes down to this. I was tired of being invisible. Not to Marcus specifically. To all of them. To the version of myself they'd decided existed. The single one. The one doing her small property thing. The one who needed to let a man lead. The one my dad looked at across restaurant tables with that particular expression of gentle concern that was really just disappointment wearing a different coat. I wanted them to see what they'd been looking at without seeing, so I didn't call my brother back directly. Instead, I reached out through my company. My company operates under the name Meridian Capital Holdings. It is not a secret. It's registered in Delaware. It has a website. It has a presence, but it is also not something I've ever connected to my personal identity in my family's world. Different last name on the entity, different email domain. My photo does not appear anywhere on the company website because I made that choice deliberately 3 years ago for reasons that had nothing to do with my family and everything to do with not wanting to be Googled by counterparties before I was ready. It turned out to serve a different purpose. My director of operations, a woman named Sandra who has worked with me for 6 years and who I trust more than almost anyone, sent Marcus a message through his business inquiry form. Expressed interest in his company as an acquisition or investment target, asked for a meeting. Marcus called me that same evening, excited. Some firm called Meridian reached out, he said. Capital Holdings. You know them? I don't think so, I said. They want to meet. I looked them up. They're real. They do deals in hospitality, commercial properties, some service businesses. He sounded more alive than he had in weeks. This could be it, you know. Real money coming in, not just a Band-Aid. That sounds promising, I said. Wish me luck. Always, I said. The meeting was at my office in Midtown. I want to be precise about what I wore because I thought about it more than is probably reasonable. I had my hair up. I almost always wear it down around family. Different glasses, the dark frames I use for client meetings rather than the wire frames I've had since grad school. A gray suit I'd bought in the fall and worn exactly twice. It was a deliberate choice, but not a dramatic one. I wasn't in a disguise. I was just in my work clothes in my workspace, in the version of myself that my family had never been invited to see. Sandra opened the meeting. She framed it as a preliminary conversation. We were evaluating several companies in the events services sector. Marcus's operation had come to our attention through industry contacts. We were interested in understanding the business better. Marcus was polished. He knew his numbers. He could speak to his client relationships. He had a clear vision for where he wanted to take the company. I was genuinely proud of him. He had built something real, even if the financial structure needed work. I sat across the table and asked questions, not personal questions, business questions. Cash flow, client pipeline, staffing model, tech infrastructure. He answered each one carefully. He looked at me once or twice the way you look at someone you're trying to read, trying to figure out if they're the decision maker or the note taker. He did not recognize me. I want to pause here and say, I understand why this seems unbelievable. I've asked myself the same question. We are not estranged. We have dinner together regularly. He knows my face. But here's what I think happened. He walked into that room expecting to meet strangers. He was in performance mode, the way you are in any high-stakes meeting where your company's survival depends on making a good impression. He was focused on answering questions correctly, on presenting himself well, on not saying the wrong thing. And the person across the table was asking questions in a way he'd never heard me speak, precise, unsparing, professional, and she was in a gray suit and dark frames in a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows in Midtown Manhattan. The brain fills in what it expects to find. He expected strangers. He found strangers. Sandra told him we'd be in touch within the week. He shook both our hands, thanked us, and left. I sat in my chair for a long time after he was gone. I sent him a term sheet 4 days later. It was fair. Better than fair, actually. The valuation was generous given his current position, the equity stake we were taking was smaller than the bridge amount warranted, and the operational support we were offering, connections, introductions, infrastructure, was worth more than the capital itself. Sandra reviewed it twice. My attorney reviewed it. It was a good deal. Marcus called me that night. Claire, you have to hear this, he said. He'd mistakenly started using my name. Something had broken through. Wait, no, I mean, he laughed, slightly unhinged. That firm came back. Meridian. The offer is, it's real money. It's real. This fixes everything. That's incredible, I said. I don't even know how they found me, but whoever they talked to, whatever intro they got, this is the one. I'm calling Dad. I felt something settle in my chest. Tell him I said hi, I said. My dad called me the next morning, not about the deal. He didn't know about the deal yet. He called because he was coming into the city for a dentist appointment and wanted to know if I was free for lunch. We went to a diner near my office, my choice, not Carmine's. I wanted to be on my own ground, even if he didn't know it. He ordered the club sandwich and talked about Marcus, how the engagement was going, whether Priya's family was warming up to them, whether Marcus's business was stabilizing. He didn't know the details of the Meridian situation yet. He just knew Marcus had seemed less stressed lately. He's figuring it out, my dad said, nodding approvingly. That's what men do. They figure it out. I ate my soup. You know what I've been thinking, he said. You're not getting any younger. He said it the way he always did, like it was a neutral observation. And I worry about you. I do. You've got your little business, which is great. I'm proud of you. But at some point you need stability. A partner. Someone building something with you. I'm building plenty, I said. I know. He waved a hand. But you know what I mean. A woman on her own. It's hard. It's a hard life. I looked at him across the table. My dad, the man who taught me to ride a bike in the parking lot of our church when I was 5. Who read to me every night until I told him I was too old for it, and then read to me for 3 more months anyway. Who showed up at every school play, every graduation, everything that mattered, always proud in his specific, complicated way. Who had no idea who he was looking at. I'm okay, Dad, I said. He patted my hand. I just want the best for you, he said. I know, I thought. That's what makes it so hard. The call came on a Thursday. Marcus had signed the term sheet. The funds were being processed. He called our dad to tell him, and my dad, being my dad, he'd immediately started Googling. He called me at 6:47 in the evening. I was still at my desk. I saw his name on my phone and I picked up on the second ring. I'm looking at this company, he said without a greeting. Meridian Capital Holdings. Okay. Marcus says they're investing in his company. A real investment. Not a small thing. His voice was different. Not angry. Not the way he gets when something upsets him, more like someone trying to piece together a jigsaw puzzle with too many pieces and not enough light. I'm on their website. Okay, I said again. There's no photo of the managing director, he paused. Just a name, and an about page that says the company was founded by a commercial real estate developer with a background in banking. Another pause. In New Jersey. I didn't say anything. The company's address, he said slowly, is on 47th Street. Dad. Your office is on 47th Street. The line was quiet. Lena. His voice had gone very still. What is this company? I closed my laptop. I looked out the window at the city. 7 years of work. $400 million in assets under management. 17 people who counted on me. Everything I had built in the time he thought I was doing my small property thing. It's mine, Dad, I said. It's been mine for 7 years. The silence that followed was the longest of my life. I heard him exhale. Just once. A long, slow breath, like something leaving his body. You were in that meeting, he said, with Marcus. Yes, he didn't know. Another long silence. Why didn't you tell me, he said. And there was something in his voice I hadn't heard before. Not anger. Something rawer than that. Something closer to grief. Because I knew what you'd say, I said, and I was tired of hearing it before I'd even finished building. He didn't respond to that. I let the silence sit. He came to my office the following Monday. He'd never been. He didn't know the address. Not really. Not as my office, just as a street he'd driven down once or twice. He texted me from the lobby and I went down to get him, and I watched his face when he walked in and saw the space, the reception desk, the conference room with the big windows, the wall of deal tombstones from closings over the years, each one a small framed reminder of something real. He stood in front of that wall for a long time. You did all of these? He said. My team did, I said. I led the team. He nodded slowly. He kept looking at the wall. I showed him around. The desk where Sandra sits, the smaller offices, the conference room where Marcus had been 3 weeks earlier without knowing it. My dad stood at the window and looked out at the city, and I stood next to him, and I didn't say anything because I'd said what I needed to say on the phone, and this moment didn't need more words. He turned to me eventually. I said a lot of things. He said, "Over the years, you did. I meant them to be helpful." He looked tired, genuinely tired, not the performative exhaustion he used sometimes to end conversations. "I don't know if that matters." "It matters a little," I said. "It doesn't fix it." "No." He was quiet. "I didn't see you." "No. I was looking right at you and I didn't see you." That landed the way I think he meant it to. Not just about the meeting with Marcus, about all of it. 20 years of dinners and toasts and a woman on her own. It's hard, looking right at something and deciding in advance what it was. He didn't cry. My dad doesn't cry. But he put his hand on my shoulder and kept it there for a moment. And he said, "I'm sorry, Lena." And I believed him. I believed him because he said it simply. No qualifications. No, but I just wanted. No, you have to understand where I was coming from. Just the thing itself, plainly stated, which is the hardest way to say it. "Okay," I said. Not "it's fine," not "don't worry about it," just, "Okay, I hear you. We go from here." Marcus found out a week later. He called me from his car, which meant he was processing something too big for inside. "The managing director of Meridian," he said. "Sandra called me to finalize some paperwork and she mentioned your name in passing. Like, casually. Like I should know." He stopped. "Lena, tell me I'm wrong." "You're not wrong. You were in that room." "I was in that room." He was quiet for so long I checked if the call had dropped. "Why?" he finally said. I thought about how to answer that. "Because you needed help," I said. "And you wouldn't have taken it the way I needed to give it." "What does that mean?" "It means if I just offered you money, you'd have taken it as your sister bailing you out. And then you'd have paid it back as fast as possible and we'd never have talked about the real problems in your business." I paused. "This way you get real capital, real support, and a partner who will not let you have 40% of your revenue in one client ever again." Another silence. "That's very calculated," he said. "That's business," I said. He laughed, the kind of laugh that comes out when something is too much to process any other way. "You could have just told us," he said. "All this time, you could have just, we would have." He stopped. "You could have just, we would have." He stopped. "I don't know what we would have done." "I know," I said. "That's why I didn't. We had dinner last month. The four of us, me, Marcus, my dad, and Priya. Not at Carmine's. Priya picked the restaurant, a Korean barbecue place in K-Town that she loves, and my dad wore an expression of mild uncertainty about the ordering process for approximately 4 minutes before Priya patiently explained it, and he relaxed and ate 3 different cuts of meat with visible enjoyment. He did not give a toast about the natural order of things. He did say, at one point, to Priya, "Your field, physician's assistant, that's a difficult program, isn't it? How long did it take you?" And Priya told him, and he listened, actually listened, the way he listens when he's genuinely interested, which he is capable of, which he just doesn't always choose. I watched him from across the table. I don't know if people change, really, not at their core, not the deep architecture of who they are, but I think they can shift. I think something can move inside a person when they realize they've been looking without seeing, and the shift is small, but it's real, and it's enough to build something from. My dad is not a new man, but he is a different one than he was last April, and I spent 7 years building things nobody believed in until they couldn't ignore them anymore. I think I can work with a different. I've been thinking about what it actually costs to stay quiet for 7 years. Not quiet in the passive way, not small, not shrinking. Quiet in the way you choose when you understand that some things can only be proven by existing, not by explaining. I built Meridian in that kind of silence. Every deal, every closing, every Thursday lunch with my attorney. None of it announced, none of it performed for an audience that had already decided what I was. That's the part people don't talk about when they talk about ambition. The deciding. Not the late nights or the risk or the capital. Those are hard, but they're legible. They make sense as sacrifice. The harder thing is deciding that what you're building is real before anyone else can confirm it for you. My dad couldn't confirm it for you. My dad couldn't confirm it. Marcus couldn't. The version of me they carried in their heads, the one doing her small property thing, the one who needed to let someone lead, that version had no room for what I was actually doing. So I built it anyway, in the space they weren't looking. That's not bitterness. I want to be clear about that. What I did with Marcus, structuring the investment through Meridian instead of just wiring him money, that wasn't revenge. It wasn't a trap. It was the most honest thing I knew how to do, because I understood something about him that he didn't fully understand about himself yet, that he needed a real partner, not a rescue. If I had just transferred funds, he would have taken it as charity and spent the next 2 years trying to prove he didn't need it. The deal gave him something to rise into instead of something to escape from. That's what I mean by cause and effect as an ethical practice, not punishment. Not cosmic score settling. Just the shape of your choices determines the shape of what comes back to you. My dad spent 20 years making choices that communicated, quietly and consistently, that I wasn't worth seeing clearly. And what came back to him was exactly that. He sat across a table from his own daughter and didn't recognize her, not because she had disguised herself from him, because he had never really looked. And then he came to my office and he stood in front of that wall and he said, "I didn't see you." And I believed him because the grief in his voice was real. That's the thing about people who are capable of change. Not that they never cause harm, but that when the evidence finally gets through, something in them actually moves. Intellect without honesty is just cleverness. Resilience without direction is just endurance. What I think I was trying to build, in the company and in that very long conversation with my dad, was something that required all three: the ethical clarity to know what I actually owed people and what I didn't, the intelligence to build something real rather than perform something impressive, and the stubbornness to keep going in the years when no one was watching. I don't know if my dad is a different man now. I know he asked Priya about her graduate program and actually listened to the answer. I know he said "I'm sorry" without a qualifier attached. I know he comes to my office sometimes now, just to sit, and he always looks at that wall for a while before he says anything. That's enough. It has to be enough. Because the alternative, waiting for complete transformation before you let someone back in, is just another kind of invisible wall, and I've spent enough years behind those. I built what I built. He finally saw it. We go from here.